Democrats are in disarray. Their actions during Trump's joint address to Congress would make juvenile delinquents blush. Chuck Schumer caved. Gavin Newsom sounds more like a member of the John Birch Society than the San Francisco liberal he is. He's just so disingenuous. I don't think anyone believes him. Even the so-called New Guard sounds like they've been living in a cave.
I don't think there's anyone who feels like what's going on right now is normal, even if you voted for Trump, right? I think there's a feeling in the country. Yep. I mean, I often say this, you know, we're about to turn 250 years old, right? We're still pretty young for a country. These are our like our angry teenage years, right? We are going through this push and pull where we're happy, we're sad, we want this, we want that. And what do you do when you have a teenager who's threatening themselves and others? You just try to get them through this period alive.
Was she talking about the Biden administration? She must have been, because polling shows an overwhelming majority of voters believe the Democrat Party is focused on the wrong issues. Some are slowly figuring out parents actually don't want their daughters playing sports against other people's sons. Parents actually don't want children carrying the guilt of what others decided centuries ago. And shockingly, some people don't think there are 18 different genders. Joining us is Guy Benson, host of the eponymous Guy Benson Show and a Fox News contributor. Welcome, Guy. You got to help me. What does the Democrat Party stand for right now other than just not liking Donald Trump?
It's a good question, and I'm not sure that they're really sure about that. They're wrestling through various elements of grief. I think that's what this is, stages of anger and grief, that they lost an election. The left feels really just entitled to power. I think that they believe that's a birthright of theirs, and when that does not happen, when people like voters have different ideas, it's very disorienting to them. And right now you're seeing, even within their own coalition, a lot of rancorous infighting about how to resist Trump, if to resist Trump, when to resist Trump. And a lot of the time they end up looking like clowns and weirdos, and there's new polling that suggests they have never been more unpopular ever. So when they talk about this isn't normal, that is true. Their level of total detachment and unpopularity is completely not just abnormal, but unprecedented, and it doesn't look like they have much of a map to get out of this.
All right, so the actions and the antics of House Democrats during Trump's address to Congress were puerile. I mean, what is the resistance? Holding up placards and wearing monochromatic outfits? Is that really the best they can come up with, holding up signs?
Yes, I think, right? They put their heads together. The brain trust got together and came up with that. I'm so old, Trey. I remember when one of your colleagues from South Carolina shouted one thing once at President Obama during a State of the Union address, and that was treated like the end of the world. Nancy Pelosi looked down like she was shooting laser beams out of her eyes at him for that. We are in a very different place these days. I feel like they probably would have been better off in many cases not showing up at all than doing what they did. With the American people, at least those who watched the speech, overall came away impressed. They liked the things that Trump was talking about. It's a self-selecting group that generally and disproportionately support the president. That's true. But they looked like petulant, ridiculous children. And even the best Democrat of the night, which was Alyssa Slotkin, in her official response, then comes out, we played the clip, but the next day or the day after, and compares the American electorate to angsty teenagers and trying to prevent the electorate from killing itself. I mean, that was really tone-deaf messaging from someone whose script was a little bit better that night. It's a mess.
Speaking of scripts, Gavin Newsom finally figured out girls should not have to compete against boys in sports. How long do you think it is before he figures out that water is a pretty good defense to fire?
Might take a while here, Trey. It seems like these realizations are coming very slowly for people like Gavin Newsom, so give him some time, let him breathe. He also said on this new podcast of his, I'd love to know who's paying for the podcast, by the way, but on this new podcast, he was in that same conversation talking about Latinx, this crazy left-wing activist term that no one uses. Like 96% of Hispanics rejected the term. They never used it themselves. And Newsom, very, very belatedly, similarly here, said, oh, well, yeah, that's crazy. No one uses that word. I'll tell you this, in my office, we never used it. And then the internet went to work and found like a zillion examples almost instantly of tweets and press releases where, of course, he had used Latinx, just like he has one of the most bleeding edge, insane left-wing records when it comes to the excesses of the trans activist agenda. So it's one thing for him to look at some polling now and look at some election results now and say, oh, golly gee, maybe the women in sports protection thing is a good political idea. That's fine. You can welcome to the party where the vast majority of Americans have been for quite some time. You, however, sir, have a record that stands in stark contrast with the new words that you are spouting on the podcast. That, I think, will and should be a problem for him. His record, not his brand new revelation.
All right, before I let you go, when your opponent is digging a grave, you should hand them another shovel, not a ladder. What could Republicans do wrong to help Democrats get out of this slough of despond that they're in right now?
Well, it's the economy, right? If ultimately Trump's theory of the case on tariffs doesn't work out, and let's wait and see. You don't have to tear your hair out yet or set anything on fire. But if next year, for example, the American people look around and say prices are up, or we're not better off, or any combination of things, that we didn't get a tax cut, or in fact there's a huge tax increase at the end of the year if congressional Republicans can't get their act together. If Republicans don't get the job done on the economy, all the insanity of the Democrats may not matter if people don't trust Republicans on the number one issue. So they've got to get that done.
One of my favorite political minds, Guy Benson, thank you for joining us on a Sunday night. See you soon.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.